Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
To another episode of Next to Madison. I am your host, Madison Malloy, and on this episode, we are talking fragrance. Men, keep tuned in. This is for you too. We are talking the history of fragrance, the power of fragrance. We are with this woman who created some of the most iconic perfumes, including the Tiffany brand, here with us, who now has her own company, who is talking about how to find the right fragrance, where you should put it. Should you stick perfume on the back of your kneecaps or your ankles? You got to tune in to find out, because it's very, very, very fascinating. Also, how to find the right fragrance for you, and really just all this stuff. We talk about pheromone perfume. Can it really make you want to hump people, or people want to hump you? So much stuff. So it's such a fun, great, amazing episode. This woman has also healed people who had long haul COVID, who couldn't smell at all, and was able to restore their senses through the power of the scents that she creates. She's also written a book. This is a very fun, amazing, educational interview. I didn't realize there was so much history behind fragrance. And every time I put perfume on now, I'm going to think just a little bit harder. And now it's going to be more fun to find the next fragrance. So we'll be right back after this brief message on this episode of Next to Madison.
Hey, it's Madison Malloy. I just wanted to remind you to make sure you grab a copy of my book, Time to Lighten the Fuck Up. It is a great, funny self-help book that is going to help you get out of your own way. I have already helped thousands and thousands of people, and they are on their way to living their dream life, and I want every listener to be able to live their dream life as well. So grab a copy of the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or even the audiobook on Audible. Now back to the show.
All right, we are back with our amazing guest. We are talking about the power of fragrance. And with us today, we've got Sue Phillips, who is a perfume expert, or better known as a Scenterpreneur. How are you?
I'm terrific. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to have you on here, because fragrance really isn't talked about a lot, but the majority of people around the world wear it. And it can be such a powerful thing. If you're wearing the wrong fragrance, people are like, get away. And if you're wearing the right fragrance, people are like, what's your phone number? So it really,
I like that.
it really is so powerful. So give us your background of how you became an expert in this field.
You know, everything in my life has really been serendipitous. I'm from South Africa. I was a singer and an actress. I came to New York basically to get into theater. And I went to see an immigration attorney, and the first thing he said is, we have 20,000 out-of-work singers and actresses. We don't need another. I said, okay. So I landed up getting my green card, and I worked for an immigration attorney, not that one, another one. And he basically helped me get my green card while he processed my card. And at night I'd go singing and acting and just do all kinds of gigs off Broadway, just to keep my hand in. And ultimately, when I became legal and I got my green card, I went to a headhunter, and he basically sent me on 3 different job interviews, because by this stage, I was still performing at night. And one was to work in a bank. I said, banking is not for me. One was to work in fashion. And at the time, I didn't feel that fashion was really my thing, because we had been so fashion backwards in South Africa.
Okay.
And the third one was to work at Elizabeth Arden. And I said, aha, there's a great synergy there between fragrance, cosmetics, and of course, show business and theater. And because I could stand up in front of people and speak, I landed up getting a position as National Training Director at Elizabeth Arden. So I was able to utilize my skills to basically perform or, speak in front of people. Yeah. And then also learn about an industry which I had been fascinated with. I think every young girl loves the idea of cosmetics and lipstick and makeup and color and all that stuff. And that's how I started. I started as a national training director for Elizabeth Arden. I landed up working, they wanted me to learn about fragrance. And so they put me in Macy's for 3 months as a sort of intern, if you will, to learn about fragrance, to learn about how to talk to the customer, how to present fragrances to people. And I did that. And then I landed up going to travel around the country, setting up training schools. And because of my background, My mother was an amazing artist and a homemaker, and everything we grew up with, was around music and art. And so I created these magical fragrance schools for the people behind the counter. So when they walked in, there was music playing, there was fragrance in the air, there was a lovely ambiance. And they were
Wow.
so motivated and so pumped to go and sell the fragrances that sales went sky high. So that's really how I started. And then after that, they promoted me to color cosmetics and then to fragrance marketing, which I loved. So I was at Elizabeth Arden for 6 years. And that sort of gave me my background for fragrance. And then Lancome hired me as marketing director for fragrance and men's skincare. And then Tiffany hired me as vice president of fragrance, and I created the Tiffany perfume for their 150th anniversary.
Wow, that's wonderful. And so how did you how do fragrances work exactly? Like when you did such an iconic perfume, how did you guys know it would be good for the majority of people who bought it?
That
Because
is
one
such a
scent.
great question. That's such a great question. When you think about a brand or a company, but mostly as a brand, you have to think about the brand essence, the brand ethos. What does that brand stand for? Does it appeal to men and women? Is it a luxury brand? Is it a fragrance, or is it going to be a fragrance for young people? Is it more classic or traditional, or is it sporty and young? So all those aspects have to be really taken into consideration so that a fragrance like Tiffany, which was such an iconic brand, it was a luxury quality brand that really reflected all those aspects. And so you can't really come up with a very, I would say, overly commercial, light, bright, citrusy fragrance that doesn't appeal to that classic customer. And yet
Right.
at the same time, you have to really understand the brand essence. And so marketing and fragrance marketing is really very important in terms of getting the brand right. And then once you get the fragrance, you have to do the packaging and the marketing and the advertising, and everything ties in to that ultimate message. What is the message that the brand is trying to convey? And
Yeah.
that's what happens.
I mean, it's amazing because there was just one fragrance, right? So it's like had
Yes.
one scent. So it had to work for so many different people. People that wanted to smell rich and that people that were rich, that wanted to continue smelling rich.
And not just rich, but quality and luxury and really beautiful ingredients. One of the things that and that taught me something, because there are so many fragrances on the market today that appeal to millennials, young people, sort of guys, the whole sort of uh, Gen X, older people, younger people. And, the idea is, can one fragrance appeal to everything, to everybody? Possibly, but maybe not. And so you have to think about various aspects that are going to resonate with the targeted customer. But who is that target customer? And so maybe one fragrance is not going to be meant for everybody.
Yeah.
But every now and again, you get a bombshell breakthrough that takes the world by storm and becomes something very iconic. So, it depends on what it is and who's marketing it and the brand.
So I want to ask, because this is popping into my head, how do they price these fragrances? Obviously, the marketing budgets behind it, the brands behind it, because you have a very popular fragrance called Baccarat that's like super duper expensive, but it's kind of the same crap put in all the bottles. Just, you know what I mean? Like, let's be honest.
I'm so glad
It's
you
probably made
said
at
that.
the same place.
I'm so glad you said that. So one of the things that happens, there are trends in fashion, trends in food, and trends in fragrance.
Okay.
And so what's happened now with that whole Baccarat Rouge trend is that it's become very sort of iconic and it's very trendy. And so what happens is this woodsy, this oud element, the almond and the oud, and it's totally different than a floral or a a light, fresh, citrusy fragrance. It's got that sort of very kind of an unusual woodsy note with almond notes. And because whether it's the name or whether it was just promoted well,
Yeah.
you smell that everywhere. Everywhere you go, you can smell that sort of theme and that sort of sillage, the trail. And now that for me is becoming so boring, because I always say to people, why wear what everybody else wears when you can really literally create and wear your own? So that's my thing. I do
Yeah.
custom fragrances, and
Oh,
I really learned about that, after I left Tiffany and I started my own business, and I created my company Scenterprises. And then I created a fragrance for Burberry, and then for Trish McEvoy, and then for Avon, and then for all these different brands. And all those different companies have brand recognition. But the question is, what does the customer want? What does the consumer want? How does it reflect their individuality and their
yeah.
personality?
I like that. So,
And
because
yeah,
yeah, you want to be unique. You want to say, I mean, it's one of the reasons you said, because why do you want to smell like everybody else? The reason
right.
I don't wear Chanel, the reason I don't wear Victor Rolf, even though I really liked that his first fragrance, I thought it was really great, but you smell it everywhere. So I don't buy it. Even though I like it, I don't buy it anymore because I want to smell more unique. But here's what's that perfume brand? I used to buy them and I really liked them. You only needed a little and it really lasted. Was they had like a star bottle. It was like New York.
Oh, sure. So that's a brand called Bond Number 9.
That's it. Yeah.
And that was created several years ago. And they now have about 40 fragrances, and you can find them at Saks and Bloomingdale's. And it's a lovely star, as is a star bottle.
Bottle.
And in
Yeah.
fact, I knew the designer who created that.
Okay. Nice.
But there are 40 different fragrances now. So it's not just one fragrance.
Yeah.
And so, you can go to a company like that and find a fragrance that you like that possibly reflects who you are. And yet at the same time, you still might smell that wherever you go, because people like to buy popular things. And so it's become one or two of those are really fabulous, and some
Yeah.
of the others are not so fabulous. It's like, anything. You have to find what you like.
So you mentioned Trish McEvoy, and then we just talked about Bond. The difference is Trish McEvoy made this perfume that I used to wear, and I loved it. And then they rolled out a pink one. Love that one too. What I didn't like about it was I didn't feel like it lasted very long. What I loved about Bond was that it lasted. So how are these fragrances made differently that makes them kind of wash away quickly and then last all day?
So one of the things that's happened now in fragrance is this whole area of regulation or regulatory ingredients. And certain fragrances have been discontinued. Beautiful classic fragrances have been discontinued, or they've been modified because you can't get the ingredients any longer. So think about this. Think about, natural disasters, earthquakes, fires, floods. They affect the actual ingredients. So if you want a beautiful Bulgarian rose oil or a magnificent sandalwood, and the area in which they grow, maybe India or Morocco or the Amazon, there are floods or earthquakes and fires, they're going to affect the ingredients. And so what perfumers do through chemical evaluation and through technology, they're able to duplicate the ingredients. And sometimes they do it with great finesse and wonderfully great technology, and sometimes they don't. And so again, some of the fragrances that were long lasting and that were really popular are no longer able to be created. And so new fragrances emerge. That's why so many new fragrances come up all the time. I always make the analogy. They say that peanuts give people anaphylactic shock. Have they banned peanuts? No, peanuts are still being sold, and they're sold in chocolates, and they're sold in food stores and so on. But if you're allergic to peanuts, you know not to buy them or to eat them. The thing with fragrances is that a lot of people don't know what's in them. And so
Mm.
the ingredients are re-engineered, reformulated, And the end result is something that might not be the way you want it to be, and it might not be the same as you've always worn for the last 15 years. So people are a little bit upset that their beautiful fragrance has been discontinued.
Yes, no, that makes sense. And then what's the like how is the processing of making this fragrance so different from like a cheap brand like a Victoria's Secret body spray to like a Baccarat?
So the process is the same. You still have to find beautiful ingredients or ingredients. Either you get the natural ingredients, which is going to be, a Bulgarian rose oil or fine sandalwood or beautiful vanilla from Madagascar.
Oh,
Those are really sourced in these various countries and places around the world, so that the natural ingredient is really high quality. Then, you get these replicas and people try and duplicate them, but they use cheaper ingredients, or they use not such fine sandalwood, or they use ingredients made in the lab with chemicals and molecules from chemicals, as opposed to really beautiful, fine, natural, real ingredients. And so there's
yeah, that
that
makes
disconnect.
sense.
One of the things that I have discovered, and when I experience, I've experienced more allergies and headaches in fragrances in the last 7 to 8 years than I ever did in the 35 plus years I've been in the industry. And I think it's all of these situations. I've never heard more people come to meet with me at my perfume boutique and say, I just can't wear commercial fragrances anymore. I get headaches and allergies. And I have experienced that because there's certain ingredients that hit you right here,
Yeah.
and it gives me a terrible headache, and it's not pleasant at all.
Yeah, no, it definitely isn't. So, speaking of being safe, people are really kind of cautious about what they put on their skin as our largest organ. Are most of these fragrances safe, or are they like the deodorants now, where people are switching to all these crazy deodorants because of the chemicals that can be cancer causing?
Right. Well, again, you have to find the right company and have to find the right fragrance that suits you. And people have to do research as well now. I guess it's like anything else. You know, um, One of the things that I really sort of pride myself on is that the fragrances that we offer and that we promote are really beautiful, high quality. And sometimes you have to sacrifice longevity and long lastingness for quality, because sometimes, everybody wants a fragrance where you put a drop on it, a drop here and a drop here, and it's going to last for 12, 15 hours. Well, sometimes it's not going to happen that way.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, because also people are using, you use a soap or a gel in the morning to shower, then you use a different hairspray, then you use a different deodorant, then you use a different lotion. So all those conflicting aromas are going to interfere with this magnificent drop of perfume that you apply so delicately. And you think that the drop of perfume is going to last for 12 hours. Well, sometimes it doesn't. But what would you rather have? Would you rather have a beautiful fragrance that reflects who you are, that is a quality fragrance that you might have to reapply every 4 or 5 hours, as opposed to maybe something so bold and so strong and so heavy that it's going to create such a feeling, and that it's not high quality. So I don't think the two are
Interesting.
mutually exclusive, but there is something to be said for beautiful fragrances that maybe don't last as long, but you can just keep it in your handbag. You can have a beautiful spray and reapply it when you want.
Yeah, and I've heard something that if you can't smell it, but other people can, it's high end, versus if you can smell it, it's probably too much. So what's the story?
Um, that also depends on your body chemistry. People with so look, we all have different chemicals in our body. Some people who are blonde are very light skinned. Some people who are oilier have darker skins. And so the fragrance also reacts to your DNA and your own chemistry. People who are light skinned might have thinner skin. And so the fragrance doesn't last as long because you don't have as many body oils. Whereas somebody who's a little bit more oilier, fragrances might last longer. So there are so many aspects to this magnificent category called fragrance, the subject. and it's complicated. It's an art and a science, and you have to know, what suits you and where to go for the appropriate quality fragrance.
Yeah. And they always say, like, when you go and you shop for a new fragrance, to put it on and wear it for a couple hours, because it could
Yes.
change, and how it works with like your chemistry. So let's talk about proper application for both cologne and perfume.
So the difference between perfume and cologne is just the question of strength. So the most concentrated form of fragrance is perfume. And that is, perfume actually has maybe more ingredients in it, maybe between 25 and 30% of natural ingredients that are then mixed and reformulated or formulated with denaturalized alcohol and different diluents and water. The more you dilute the fragrance or the perfume, the less concentrated it becomes. So you have perfume, then eau de parfum, then eau de toilette, and eau de cologne. And the lightest is eau fraîche, which means, fresh. The literal translation of eau de parfum is the water, EAU, water of perfume. Wow. French, but the ingredients are the same for perfume, eau de parfum, eau de toilette, eau de cologne. It's just a question of the concentration, how much is diluted, whereas something could be
interesting. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And that probably goes into the price point as well. When you're just getting a body spray, it's very watered down, which is why it's not going to last as long, and spray is
and that is why a perfume is more expensive than an eau de perfume or eau de parfum, which is more expensive than eau de toilette, which is more expensive than eau de cologne.
Yeah.
And cologne is the lightest form, or eau fraîche is a new category, is the lightest form. So perfume is supposedly the strongest, most concentrated form of fragrance.
So when men wear cologne and it's really strong, they just put too much on?
So cologne has become sort of a masculine term for men, but cologne could be used for women too. It was just men felt they didn't want to use perfume because the word perfume has been used for centuries, and it really connoted something for women. Yeah. But interestingly enough, men are now asking me, I want to make my own perfume. So I try and educate people by saying, perfume doesn't have an agenda. Ingredients don't have a gender. There's no such thing as masculine oranges and feminine peaches. Ingredients are ingredients. And so the idea of a fragrance being only for women, example, perfume, is basically not true, because men have been wearing fragrance and perfume for centuries. I mean, the word perfume, do you know what the word perfume means? So the word perfume comes from the Latin, which means literally per fumum. Per meaning through, fumum meaning smoke. So the word perfume came from the Latin, and centuries ago in the ancient Egyptian times, they used to make sacrifices to the gods, and they would put on an altar of wood all the elements that they wanted to offer to the gods. And as they burned the offerings on the altar, the smoke from the perfume wafted into the air. And so through the smoke wafted this beautiful aroma, and it went up to the gods, and they wanted to offer it to the gods. So that is the literal word, through smoke, which comes from perfume. So, men used perfume for centuries, and it only became, I think, more like a marketing term. Oh, parfum pour femme, perfume for women, cologne pour hommes, cologne for men, because they felt men didn't want to wear something too strong.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess if my dad told me that he just got a new perfume, I might look at him with 5 heads, go, do you have something to tell me? But if he said cologne, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. And if my mom told me she got a cologne, I'd be like, do you have something to tell me?
No, I mean, women can wear cologne, and women can wear cologne, and men can wear perfume. Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it just matters what it smells like. My dad smelled like a giant flower. I might have some questions. My mom smelled like a giant beechwood tree. I might have some.
But think of this. I mean, look, men can wear flowers too. men can love roses, men can love lilac or lily or jasmine or gentle florals, and women can love woodsy and spicy ingredients. As I said before, there's no such thing as a gender for an ingredient. You know,
Interesting. Okay.
I
Just think
I
for
actually
women.
at the Oscars before the pandemic, I did a gift suite at the Oscars, and one of the most wonderful actors, Oba Babatunde, was there. I mean, they were all there. Marsha Gay Harden was there, and Britney Spears' husband was there, and I met all these wonderful celebrities. And Oba Babatunde came over to my perfume table, and he said, "What am I smelling?" And I had just sprayed the rose fragrance. And he said, "This is beautiful." And he absolutely loved it. And he said, "I've never smelled a rose fragrance like this." And he bought it. So
Wow.
men can wear fragrance and can wear roses too. And women can wear woodsy and spicy. So
Yeah, rose water is my favorite smell in the whole world.
nice.
I just love it. But it doesn't last very long because it's
Well,
water. So I need
rose water won't last because
yeah,
there's not a lot of essential oils in the rose water, and it's
yeah.
more of a diluted fragrance than a heavier concentration like a perfume.
So what would be a good fragrance as far as if somebody loves rose water?
Um, a beautiful rose fragrance. They could come to me and I show them my rose fragrance.
Yeah.
um, interestingly enough,
I
people
will do
now,
that as soon as I'm back. And you're in New York?
yes.
I will
Where are
be.
you? Where are you
I'm
based?
between Colorado and New York.
Ah,
Yeah.
sure.
So when I'm in town, I'll come see you. And you can make me
I
strong
would be
rose water scented, but not water.
absolutely. It's funny. I have a beautiful rose floral, and I call it an exotic rose floral because it's not a pure rose, but it's mixed with cognac and clove and a hint of violet leaf. So it's very modern. It's very exotic. It's a little bit more robust than a traditional rose, but it's got some beautiful ingredients. And the overall theme is rose, but it's got the cognac and the clove, which gives it a richness and a sort of a sensuality, which is just fabulous. I love it.
Oh, I can't wait to smell that. So now we're going to go into the fun part because I've been seeing these videos. I don't know who makes it, but there's a perfume out there that apparently makes people want to hump you. It's like a pheromone perfume. What is that about?
Well, look, fragrance has always been applied. Well, let me go back. Fragrance has been applied for several reasons during the last 5,000 years. It used to be for religious ceremonies, as I said, in the ancient Egyptian times. It also was used to ward off the evil spirits. So in the 13th century, they used galbanum, and that was used in the sort of way to ward off the evil spirits. Even in the Catholic churches, they have these incense holders
Yeah.
and they put the incense in, and that's also to welcome people back to the church to find the religious. So fragrances have been used for everything. In the 17th, 18th century, at the time of Napoleon, they didn't have baths, they didn't have showers. They basically, used fragrance to cleanse themselves and to get rid of the body odor. So because our sense of smell is our most powerful sense, it is the one sense that connects memory and emotions. And so a fragrance that is going to indulge your senses into a very sensory aspect to make you want to, feel sensual and sexy and make you feel that you want to be, go and find a lover. I mean, it happens. So, I think it's part of the overall brand ethos. How do I feel when I apply a fragrance? When I apply a fragrance, is it going to make me feel sexy and sensual to want to really indulge, so that I give off a beautiful aura of sensuality and sexuality that appeals to the next person.
Oh,
And
interesting.
think
So
about that.
maybe it's a mind thing. Maybe it's a little law of
Yes.
attraction. They don't realize it, that the
that-
energy they're giving off is. So I guess it's like if you think this is going to make people hump you, then all of a sudden that's all you're going to be seeing is people wanting to hump you. So maybe that's the thing. I'm gonna. It's really cheap. I'm gonna buy it, and we'll get together in New York, and I'll put it on when I have a
Well,
bunch.
I want you to text me the name because I don't know
I will.
the name, but text me the name so I'll let you know
There's like
what I do.
There's like all these TikTok videos where people are like, my boyfriend won't get his hands off me, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, why would you want that? Like, if I needed a scent to make my person
Right.
attracted to me, I probably have some other issues to work on. But yeah, it's like a weird thing. It like brings out your pheromones, and your pheromones are what the person, the opposite sex or same sex in some people's cases is attracted to.
Well, it's all about attraction. It's really, and you know, I don't really, studies have been done. Are there really pheromones in people? There are, animals have pheromones because, you know, animals sniff. And that's how they really attract each other, through sniffing. I mean, you've seen dogs and they sniff. That's what they're doing. They're checking out the opposite sex and they're checking out, you know, what is going to make them want to procreate. I don't think human beings have it to the same extent, and that is why fragrances have become the new pheromone. I mean, there was a fragrance called pheromone years ago. I don't know if it's still around, but the whole idea of wearing fragrance and to apply a fragrance to make you feel sexy and sensual and confident and individual is really the aspect of what the fragrance does for you, as opposed to what's in my body chemistry that's going to appeal to people.
Right. No, that makes sense.
And yet I will tell you, I had a situation, I had a flirtation with somebody for a long, long time. And the chemistry was amazing. When we finally got together, his body chemistry was such a turnoff that I actually couldn't do anything, because his own body chemistry and his own body, whatever was going on there, either the foods he was eating or whatever it was such a turnoff. So that was sort of the other extent where, you know, you could be so attracted to somebody and it could be these sparks flowing across the room. And suddenly when you get together, it could be, no, enough, basta, not for me.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's true. Chemistry is kind of everything. Like, does it go together? Does it fit? Yeah. They've always said if you're with the wrong person, your body will reject them. Either you'll
Absolutely.
chemistry or you'll develop like lots of yeast infections, because it's like the universe's way or God's way of being like,
Right.
get away from this person. It doesn't work for you. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. So getting back to the spray, you should spray it on your wrist and then your neck. And then I always sprayed it. Honestly, don't laugh at me. My friends always used to laugh. I would spray it on my wrist like this. And then I would spray one here, like on my neck. And then I would spray over my clothes, my cooch, and my butt. Because I wanted a balance of fragrance.
Right. So the reason we spray where we spray, it's because of the pulse points. You know, when you go to the doctor, they take your pulse here or here, because that's where the pulse, it pulsates the most there. And you can actually feel the veins and you can actually feel the sense. And that is why we spray at the pulse points, so that the fragrance diffuses. So I tell a funny story. It's fun. When I first started in fragrance, I used to tell the story to the people that I was training. So I said, you know, where do you wear fragrance? And I always put on this French accent. I said, the best way to apply the fragrance is at the pulse points, at all aspects of the pulse points, so that the fragrance rises. And where do you start? So at the ankles. So in the old days, the women wore the long skirts. So as the swishing of the skirt would go backwards and forwards, it would cause the fragrance to rise. And we know that fragrance heat rises, right?
Yeah.
So you want the fragrance to rise. So I used to say, you apply it at the ankles, behind the knees, in between the thighs, in between the breast area, at all aspects and at all areas where you want to be kissed. What do the Americans do? A spritz here and a spritz here. And who does they attract? The birds and the clouds.
Wait, so you're supposed to put some on your ankles, your knees, and in between your thighs?
So that was the old sort of idea of where fragrances should be worn. You know, centuries ago, women wore long skirts and they were all covered up, and they didn't really have a lot of ablutions. So you applied fragrance everywhere at the ankles. So as the long skirts would swish up, the fragrance would rise behind the knees, because that's a sort of very essential erogenous area. In between the thighs, that's an erogenous area. In between the breasts, and at the pulse points at the wrist.
Right. So should people still do that today?
You know, I would say in summer, when people are wearing clothes that are not as covered up, and you want to have a beautiful fragrance that envelops you, sure, why not?
I never got the back of the knees. I always just sprayed like over like my crotch. Not that my crotch smells at all, but like I just did. But I'm like, maybe it would be better just to be like, whoop, like in between my thighs and my knees. I didn't even think about that. And the ankles, I'm like, I'm gonna do that. If I get attacked on the street in a good way, I'm gonna be like, whoa, we're gonna stick to the wrist and the neck.
Right, exactly. And you know, the chest area as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot the
and men can, you know, so what men do is they spray here and they spray all around. Why not spray on the chest? It's you know, you want to nuzzle up to a man, and you know, that whole idea of the chest and the hair, and you know, that wonderful sensual part of a man, you know, it's great. Why not? So think about the whole idea of attraction and what it can lead to.
I didn't realize perfume was so sexual.
Oh, definitely.
I just thought you wanted to smell good. And now I know if I don't want to shower, I always shower, but like sometimes if you're like, I need a day off, right? And you spray yourself with perfume, it should be called a Napoleon shower. Because that's what they did in Napoleon.
Well, you know what Napoleon said to Josephine? This is common knowledge amongst fragrance people. He sent word to Josephine and he said, "Don't bathe for a week. I'm on my way home."
Ew.
There you go. That whole sensuality. And, you know, look, the French love a woman who has hair under her arms.
Yes, I knew that.
It absorbs the body odor and absorbs the perspiration. And as they perspire, sometimes men love that earthy, musky, sexy smell. You know, there's no accounting for taste. But you know what's interesting, I have to tell you. I've learned this, you know, every culture has a different preference. And it's absolutely accurate what I'm saying. It's a generalization, but it's accurate. Americans love to smell fresh and clean.
Yeah.
You ask anybody, how you want to, fresh and clean, fresh and clean. So it's fresh and clean. Europeans love to smell, love sort of florals. A lot of Europeans love florals. South Americans love spicy fragrances. The English like something very mild, like a lavender. And the people in the Middle East, Moroccans, love a heavy oud and the incense. And you can really tell, I can tell the fragrance preference that people like based on their cultural upbringing and based on their culture. Because it's really interesting. Americans love to be fresh and clean. And that is why we deodorize ourselves, we shower, we shampoo, God forbid we should smell earthy and musky. Ugh.
Right.
But there are some cultures that absolutely love that. They don't want women to smell fresh and clean. They want that earthy, musky, sexy, sensual smell because it's a turn on to them. So different cultures have different preferences.
So interesting.
So interesting, isn't it?
So how do people, if they're in like a Macy's or a Bloomingdale's or whatever, find the right fragrance for them?
Well, there are so many now. I mean, there are thousands and thousands and thousands, and it's confusing. It's so confusing for people. Look, at the risk of being very sort of, self-worth, self-generating. That is the reason that I got into what I do, because there are so many fragrances and there's so many choices out there and there's so many brands. I do a whole talk about fragrance through the decades and which fragrances were popular, starting in the 1920s, where everything was deep and dark and very um, spicy and very robust. And then, throughout the ages, fragrances have changed so much. There was a fragrance in the 80s. I don't know if you remember, Giorgio Beverly Hills. I mean, it took the world by storm.
No.
Then there was Angel. It was a different category. And so now it's the Baccarat Rouge. But there are so many different types of fragrances that don't appeal to everybody. And that's why I got into customization. So what I do is I help people find the fragrance that they love, that reflects their individuality and their personality. So, for instance, if somebody says, well, I don't like florals because roses make me smell like an old lady and I think about my grandma and I don't want roses. And that's another thing that happens. Unfortunately, rose got a bad rap because when our mothers and our grandmothers used to wear face powder, and I should have some now because I'm very shiny, but when mothers and grandmothers used to wear face powder, there was a rose ingredient in the face powder. So as you kissed your mom or your grandma, you smelt that rose face powder. So what was the association? Rose, old lady. And so rose really has gotten a bad rap. But rose is one of the most beautiful fragrances. So, if you don't want rose, you don't have to have rose. The question is, there are so many fragrances on the market today that people really don't know what the ingredients are. And many of them do have rose. And so you don't know when it's going to start to sort of bloom, so to speak, because you have top notes, middle notes, and base notes. So you apply a fragrance on and it hooks you in, and it's lovely and fresh and clean and exhilarating and it's sparkling. And as it mixes and wears with your body chemistry, some of the middle notes come out, and those could be rose or some spicy notes. And then the deeper, darker base notes are the ones that sort of last longer. But fragrances can change from beginning to middle to end.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what's in it, you might love the fragrance in the beginning. And then as it starts to settle with your body chemistry, you might get a rose note and you say, where did this come from?
Damn rose. Well, that is, it's just so interesting. You take such a simple thing. Like we all think, oh, you're going to go buy some perfume, deodorant, whatever. But how perfume really kind of became this whole thing, and how it's gone through multiple centuries and cultures and people, and how it's plays such a key role in almost our attraction and how we feel.
Absolutely. It's, I also talk about the economic, social, and political trends that fragrances have given rise to. People don't even think about that. People just think now, what do I want? How do I want to smell? And what's popular? What do I like? What should I try? Without understanding that fragrance has been around for centuries. It is an art and it's a science. And I go back to the fact that our sense of smell is our most powerful sense because it connects memory and emotion, and it also connects taste and smell. And so one of the things that have happened, what's happened with me and my fragrance business, is that COVID did one good thing, and it only did one good thing. It accelerated the awareness of our sense of smell. Because one of the problems that COVID had was people became anosmic, which means you don't have a sense of smell. It took away the sense of smell and also the sense of taste. Yeah. So some people have actually had lost their sense of smell for 15 months, 2 years, and thereabouts. And they realize when they lose it, how important it is. Otherwise, we don't think about it. We just don't think about our sense of smell until we've lost it.
Yeah, it's like when you get a bad cold and you can't taste anything, you don't even want to eat. There's no joy out of it, which is like such a crazy thing. So where can people find information about you? How can they find you online if they're not in New York? How can they go see you in New York? Give us all your plugs.
Okay, well, I also wrote a book.
Oh, yes.
I have to show you my book.
We love authors. I'm an author.
So this is my book called The Power of Perfume.
Oh,
I
okay.
started where it, and I wrote this actually. Well, what happened was I had a beautiful perfume boutique downtown in Tribeca, and when the pandemic came, everything closed downtown. You could throw a cannonball down and you wouldn't have hit anybody because nobody was down there. Everything just closed up, and so my business came to a grinding standstill. And I said, what do I do? So I decided to write my book after being so many years in the industry.
Yeah.
And I called it The Power of Perfume,
I
which
love
is
that.
really
I love that title. I love that cover.
impetus.
That's beautiful.
And when it was published, NBC wanted to do a story about the book. And the day before the interview, they called me and they said, Sue, we have a long hauler, which meant somebody who hadn't been able to, I didn't even know what a long hauler meant at that time. And it was
Yeah.
somebody who had not been able to smell for 15 months. And so they said, do you think you can help this person? I said, well, I don't know, but I'll try. And she met with me and I took her what I call on a fragrance journey. And it became a scent healing journey because as I went through all the different blends, she could smell, no, no, no. By the time she got to the 14th one, she finally stopped and she sort of sat up straight and she started to cry. And she said, I smell something. Literally got so emotional. And so that was the start. And because of that, the TV piece went viral. I've now helped about 200 people regain their sense of smell after COVID.
That's
So
amazing.
it's been amazing. And honestly, as I said, the only thing that COVID really has been a positive aspect was to raise the awareness of how important our sense of smell is and our sense of taste, because
Yeah.
you know, everything revolves around socialization. Let's meet for food, for lunch, for dinner, for tea, for breakfast, for parties. And, you know, when people can't smell and they can't taste, you know what? They don't want to go out because it's not a fun thing for them.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, well,
yeah.
you're a saint. Well, that's an amazing. So yeah, you guys go and grab a copy of her book, The Power of Perfume. Where is it sold?
It's on Amazon. It's on my website. So I have two websites. One is SuePhillips.com, and I'm with double L. And then my company is Scenterprises with Scent and Enterprises, Scenterprises. And they can find me on Google, Sue Phillips Fragrance. I promise you, you'll find me. I'm all over the internet.
Okay. And do you have any TikToks or Instagrams or any
I
of
have
that?
TikTok. So Scentfully Sue is my main Instagram and TikTok. Scentfully, SCENTFULLY.
I love
Then
it.
my company is Scenterprises. So the reason I have all these names is because I have a company and I had to claim my company name. And then I had the Centarium, which was my boutique downtown. And people said, Sue, but you're the brand, you know. So I said, okay, well, I have to have Sue Phillips, but somebody else had Sue Phillips. So now I'm the real Sue Phillips.
Okay.
And then I had Sue Phillips Fragrance. So Scentfully Sue, Scenterprises, the real Sue Phillips, and Sue Phillips Fragrance.
Okay, so go follow one of those or all of those. Pick up the book and go see her. Can they see you in New York if they're in New York?
Yes, so I have a lovely perfume boutique now on 80th and Madison. It's by appointment. It's called Sue Phillips Fragrance.
Okay.
And I would love to see people, you know, people actually find me online and they take my scent quiz. I have a terrific scent quiz because that will also help determine who you are and what kind of fragrance you like, whether you like fresh or floral or woodsy or spicy. So you take the scent quiz online, I get the results, and I can actually create a fragrance for you and ship it out, which I've done to so many people who literally can't come to New York, who haven't been able to come to New York. So they take my scent quiz and I ship it to them and they love it.
Okay, perfect. So you definitely check that out if you are overwhelmed in the perfume section and you just can't find something you like. This is your solution. So definitely go follow her, check her out, read her book, all that good stuff. Sue, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the show and educate us about fragrance. I didn't realize there was so much I didn't know. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who's listening, wherever you are. Thank you again. We couldn't do it without you. So we will see you next time to find out who's next.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms, and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@nexttomadison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.